Hi, my spooky friends, and welcome back to the Crocheted Caution Tape, where we talk about true crime, dark history, mysteries, and all things spooky. I am Erica, and I will be guiding you through today's story. Hey, some of you have been around for a while. My studio has changed again. I am now in a bigger space. And I even have an area where hopefully one day I will be able to do lives and crochet and answer questions. Still quite a while is away from that, but one day. Before we start talking about what story we're going to cover, I'm going to let you guys know what I am going to be working on today. Today we are going to be working on a crocheted caution tape. Finally, I wrote down a pattern, which I will be referencing throughout making this. I don't know if you all can see that well, but I have actually sketched out my pattern for it, and I'm going to be working off of that to make the crocheted caution tape. And hopefully whenever it's finished, it will be, I have another window outside of this one. There's another one on the other side. And the plan is to have it hanging between the two windows. So exciting. Okay. Um, so today we are going to be discussing Thelma Todd. Therefore, if you guys do not know, she was a Hollywood starlet in the 1920s and 1930s. Little fun fact that I have recently found out is that this starlet is actually who my granny was named after. So, well, I just found that out recently, so it's all exciting. I'll go ahead and do the trigger warning. This does talk about death, it talks about violence, and it talks about the taking of one's own life. Before we're going to start on that, we're going to, this is my yarn, I haven't started it yet. So, we're going to first we're going to make the first couple rows. For those of you who are interested, I am going to be doing this in corner to corner technique, which is make a tile and then you increase the tile and then you decrease the tile and then it makes like a square. So this is going to be in multiple squares, but start off by doing a little, oop, I don't know, can you see that? Okay. So we are going to chain 6. And then we're going to do a double crochet in the 4th hoop from the hook. Then we're going to do 2 more double crochets to finish off the chain. And then we have our first little square. And we're going to chain 6 more. figure out where my camera angles are. And again, we're going to do the 3 double crochets starting in the 4th stitch from the hook. Yes, this is a little bit different than we normally do. We normally just jump right on into the story, but I also don't normally follow patterns. So, and this one being one that I wrote, I gotta follow the pattern for it to turn out right. Hopefully it will turn out right whenever it's all finished. I've never made it before. And I also want to talk more about the crocheting aspect of the crochet caution tape. Okay, so we got two little squares there. And we're gonna chain 3. I don't do this technique often, so still be a pro by the end of this, but yeah. Right now, so much. So chain 3, and we're going to do three in this first little gap right here. Get my camera to focus again. There we go. Right there. Okay. Let's try it this way. That's still cute. Then we're gonna do a slip stitch to get these 2 parts to go like that. On the mix and L. Okay, so we have our 2 little blocks. We're going to flip it around so that we can flip stitch into the first one. Okay, and then we're going to chain 3. And then we're going to double crochet 3 more into the chain 3 space. then we got an L. Alright. Well, we got that started. Let's dive into Thelma Todd. Thelma Todd was born in 1906 in Lawrence, Massachusetts. She was a very intelligent child, very personable, um, very nice. She was a sweet kid. And her dream was actually not to become a movie star, but to be a school teacher. Her whole school days, she was strive to get good grades so she can get into the Lowell Normal School. Now, the Lowell Normal School is now called the University of Massachusetts in Lowell. And this was a school where uh, they did training for school teachers. That's the whole point of the school, was to train school teachers. In 1925, Thelma and her friend Anne McMahon were invited to go to the Hood Practice School. It was a very, very good school for teachers. You had to be invited to join, and they got practical teaching in being a teacher. Now, her mom had different aspirations for her. Her mom wanted her to become a star. So she was always signing Thelma up to be in all of these different pageants, these beauty pageants. And she was a very beautiful woman, and she won multiple beauty contests. In 1925, she actually became Miss Massachusetts. She did not win Miss America, but she did become Miss Massachusetts in 1925. And the day after she won this beauty contest, she was asked to come in to do a screen testing. Yeah. She was requested to go in and submit a screen testing to Paramount Studios. Paramount Studios has not always been a great thing to be part of. She was signed on with Hal Roach of Paramount Studios. And just a little backstory on Paramount Studios. In its heyday, I'm not so sure about how it is now, but I'm sure it's gotta be better than back then. But I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. To be signed with Paramount Studios as a woman or girl, female in general, it was intense. It was very intense. You weren't required. You weren't required. You were required to stay the same weight. you were not able to gain or lose more than 5 pounds, or your contract could be terminated. You were given uppers to stay awake during the long hours of shooting. You were given downers to try to get some sleep. It was just not good. You were required to go to all of these Hollywood parties where so many drugs were available. They had cocaine, they had heroin, opioids, ether. All were readily available at these parties, and yeah, you were required to partake. Due to these, a lot of people in Hollywood were addicted to drugs and alcohol because this was in their contracts. Let me see. 3, I'm not too. So Thelma was signed with Hal Roach. She did 119 movies between 1925 and 1935. 119. Now, a lot, like, she started out in the silent movies, in the silent movie era, and then whenever talkies became a thing, which is what we would deem regular movies were called back then, where the actors and the actresses weren't just a pretty face, they also had to recite lines. And she was always the beautiful blonde in these slapstick kind of comedies. She was very good at it. She became known as with her 2 nicknames, which were Hot Toddy and the Ice Cream Blonde. I'm doing here's 3. And I'm just continuing to build on to the stitches that I am growing. You see, growing. She acted along some big names like Zazu Pitts. Like, she was in a lot of movies with Zazu Pitts, in a lot of her short movies. She was with the Hardy brothers. Laurel and Hardy films. She was with the Marx Brothers. She was with even Cary Grant. She was in Cary Grant's first movie. Yeah, interesting. Alright. In 1932, on July 18th, 1932, Thelma eloped with Pat, and I know I'm not going to say this name right, Pat DeCiccio? I'm pretty sure he was a director at the time as well. They had a very volatile relationship where they were both part of Hollywood scene, so they were both doing the drugs, doing the alcohol, and, Thelma even had her signature drink, 3 Fingers of Rye. Pretty sure it's whiskey. It's a lot. So they had a very volatile relationship. They fought a lot, and we're just gonna call him Pat because I can't say his last name. Sorry. I don't want to butcher it. So Pat was a very violent man, and their arguments often led to fights, like physical fights. And they were so bad that Thelma even ended up in the hospital due to the beatings that she lived through. They did not last that long. They were divorced in March of 1932. Trying to get my angle right. Sorry. So Thelma wanted out of these slapstick comedies. She wanted to do more than just be the goofy one in the movies and everything. And her absolute favorite thing to do was to cook comfort foods for her friends. Her signature dish was lamb chops cooked over a charcoal boiler. Uh, this love for cooking led her to opening her restaurant, Thelma's Sidewalk Cafe, in Hollywood in 1935, alongside Roland West, who was an off and on lover for Thelma through before her marriage to Pat, during her marriage to Pat, after her marriage to Pat, off and on. But they opened up Thelma's Sidewalk Cafe. They even uh, moved into adjoining bedrooms above the cafe, and Thelma loved this cafe. Loved this cafe. You would see her there all the time. She would be there behind the counter, handing out change, in the kitchen with the cooking and the she would be waitressing, she would be hosting. I think she was very much involved into this, into her restaurant. She loved it. And her and Roland ran it together. He had a house where his wife Jewel, because yes, he was married, lived in their house that was about 400 feet uphill from where the restaurant sat. Thelma knew that being a starlet in Hollywood was a fleeting career. It didn't last long. If anything could change and you no longer had a career. So Thelma really enjoyed having the cafe as basically her retirement plan. So Thelma was even quoted in, I believe it was LA Times, where she said, I want to get the quote right. I have heard so much about the choice foods of those days, preceding prohibition, when eating was still a fine art. Always I read with great interest about the bon vivants of the gay 90s, when people dined with pomp and ceremony, before they became addicted to grabbing a sandwich and a slab of pie and calling it a meal. So, as we have touched, Thelma loved her cafe. Always there, always taking care of it. She adored it. In October of 1935, the cafe was doing so well She had plans for renovations. LA Times had stated that the business was doing so good that Thelma was planning on doing renovations totaling $10,000. $10,000 in 1935. That's like 200 and about 220,000 in today's money. Like, wow, business was bumping. Now, it was October of 1935, in December of 1935. That's on December 15th. Thelma went to a party at Cafe Chocadero. This party was actually held in Thelma's name by Ida Luciando, another actress, and her father. And so she had to go. West was not too thrilled. He didn't go with her. I'm not quite sure why he didn't go with her if he was so worried, but he didn't go with her. He was concerned about her drinking and told her to be home by 2. Now, Thelma being the how to word this? Being the little rebel that she was and being, her own person, she laughed and was like, I'll be home at 2:05. Now, she did not make it home at 2:05. The whole party, even it was held in her name, and she treated it like a business transaction. There were a lot of big names there. Like, she would talk to Ida's dad about some movie ideas. She talked to bigwigs. She was there networking, basically. At this party, as I said, there were a lot of Hollywood connections there, along with Thelma's ex-husband, Pat. He was there with a date, and it is said that the two had an altercation at this party. They argued, not entirely sure about what, but even though they had this altercation, Thelma remained in high spirits. She even went to a table of big shot Hollywood people and did a little wager with them. She bet them a free meal at her cafe that they would not come to her restaurant the following night to dine. Around 3 o'clock, she had someone call Roland to let him know that she would be coming home soon. This is past the 2 o'clock. He had threatened to lock the doors and everything, lock her out. She had not made it home by 2. Well, so she had somebody call him at 3. Like, hey, I'll be home soon. Now, she did have a chauffeur. She did not have a license due to previous driving while intoxicated. And so she had her chauffeur drop her off outside of her apartment. The driver had even stated that, she wasn't her normally bubbly self. She was kind of pensive, and she did not have him walk her to her door like she normally would. It's a little weird, a little weird. The following day, those Hollywood big shots did arrive at the cafe, and when they asked Roland where Thelma was, because she was not there, Roland kind of like brushed it off and was like, well, she must be with her mother. They dined, they got their meal for free. Everything was okay. Nobody thought anything of it. Well, the following morning, on Monday, Thelma's maid went to the garage where she kept her car at Roland's house, up the hill, 400 feet up the hill from the restaurant. Her maid went to go get her car like she normally did, and there she found Thelma. She found Thelma slumped over sideways in the car, still wearing the shimmering blue dress that she had worn at the party 2 nights before. She was slumped over in her car, and it was a 1932 Lincoln Phaeton. Very nice car. She did note that she had some dry blood around her nose and her mouth. Immediately ran down the hill to notify the police, Roland, of her discovery. Now, initially, whenever the police had arrived, they were suspecting that she had taken her own life. She was a very intelligent woman, but they thought that she had locked herself in the garage, started her car up, and passed away from the carbon monoxide poisoning. They thought that, maybe she had just drank too much and she was very intoxicated and forgot that having a car running in a closed door would cause carbon monoxide poisoning. They also thought like it could have been an accidental killing where, it was a chilly night and she just went in. She was locked out of her apartment. She couldn't get in, so she went to the car to stay warm on the chilly December morning, and just fell asleep. Another theory is that Thelma did have some stalkers. She had 2 guys that were trying to extort $10,000 from her by penalty of death. These threats became so serious that in March of 1935, Thelma had gone out and purchased the gun and a pit bull named Nibs. She loved this dog. For protection. Okay, so you all can see how it's all going in different directions. It's starting from this corner. I am now on the row And I need to make some changes, so I'm gonna look at the pattern. Alright. Where's my black? There's my black. Alright. So, there were some things that were against it being she taking her own life or an accidental death. Like we said before, Thelma was a very intelligent woman, and she most definitely knew. She loved cars. She knew that what the dangers of running a car in an enclosed space would be. Backtrack. Those two stalkers were arrested in New York. So they did not do it. They were cleared of Thelma's death. Thelma was a very intelligent woman, and she knew about cars. She loved cars. She absolutely would have known to not leave a car running in an enclosed space, that it could cause carbon monoxide poisoning. She absolutely would have known that. Another point to be made is that when the police went into her apartment, she had hundreds of presents that were wrapped for her friends for Christmas. So she had it all wrapped. It was like just 10 days before Christmas whenever she was last seen. Oops. Oh yeah, that's right. So she had all these presents for all of her friends. And even the day after she was found, her friends also received Christmas cards from her, wishing them a Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. There wasn't any note, there wasn't any indication that this was going to happen. Why do I keep messing this one up? It's because it's... I think it's because it's the black. The autopsy did show that she did die of the carbon monoxide poisoning. However, she did have throat damage that seemed like it was from like a hose being forced down her throat. She had the blood on her mouth. She had a broken nose. She even had cracked ribs. How could carbon monoxide poisoning cause cracked ribs? Not making a whole lot of sense there. No. Now, her mother, who lived in a house that Thelma had given her not far away, had stated that there's no way that Thelma could have walked those 270 stairs from her restaurant to the garage up the hill because she had a really bad heart condition. You have a heart condition, you're not going to be able to walk that many stairs in the middle of the night in heels and in the middle of December. Like, I know it's Hollywood, it doesn't get as cold there as it does here, but still. Also, speaking of her heels, there were no sign of rough usage that would have came with climbing all of those stairs. They weren't worn out. They were in perfect shape. It's just not adding up. It's not. So, who could it have been? The first suspect, the dear sweet ex-husband, Pat. You said before, he was a very violent man. Very violent man. He beat her constantly during their marriage, and they did have an altercation. Sorry. Oh, new patterns. Fine. Alright. They did have an altercation at the party the last night that she was seen, and so naturally, yeah, he became a suspect. He was also, along with his Hollywood contacts, he was a mob enforcer. And he had many connections with the mob, including Lucky Lucy. Realizing that I made a mistake with Ida's last name at the party, her name was Ida Lucchino, not Luciano. So, he had connections with Lucky Luciano. And let's get to Lucky Luciano, because he would also be a suspect. He was a mob boss. He is said to have had an affair with Thelma at some point, and messing this stitch up. He had many operations going in drugs, alcohol, prostitution. He had all of the criminal operations going on in Hollywood. And he was who ran it. They did meet. Lucky and Thelma had met through Pat. Surprise, surprise. And, they did have an affair. A not long-lived affair, but they did have a short affair. And, Thelma would use Lucky's connections for supplies for her restaurant. Which wasn't really a great idea to use mobster connections, because her relationship with Lucky was also violent. So we have Pat, who abused her physically. We have Lucky, who also was a violent relationship. And then Roland, who is very controlling. A woman at a type. So Lucky, he supplied Thelma with amphetamines to help her control her appetite, to help her lose weight, so she did not go out of the 5 pounds gain or lose. Lucky tried to run an illegal casino in Thelma's restaurant, but as we have said before, the restaurant was Thelma's baby. She wasn't going to allow illegal gambling going on in her restaurant. She did have gambling going on, but it was like card games. She didn't run a casino in there. She definitely wasn't going to let a mobster run a casino, an illegal casino, in her restaurant. She cared too much for this restaurant. it had been overheard that whenever he was trying to get her to run the casino in her restaurant, she had said, "Over my dead body." And he replied, "That can be arranged." And as we all are probably aware of by now, the LA Police Department in the 1930s was corrupt. It was so corrupt. And Lucky had them in his hands. He could pay off to be like, "Hey, yeah, look the other way for this. Yeah, just say that she killed herself. It's not a murder." So that's another suspect. The third suspect would be Jewel Carmen, who was Roland's wife. Not ex-wife, wife. Whenever Thelma and Roland went into business together with Thelma's Sidewalk Cafe, not only were Roland and Thelma partners in business, Jewel was also a business partner in the cafe. So, I mean, Thelma was having an affair, a long time affair, off and on with her husband. Her husband was having a long time affair with Thelma, so she had that against Thelma. And she claimed that the business was running, like, Thelma was running the business into the ground, essentially. Where, since she was getting her restaurant supplies from Lucky and the prices were overpriced and she was spending too much money, more than what was needed, they weren't making much of a profit, which goes completely against what the LA Times said about how the business was doing great and Thelma was going to. So maybe that happened like between October and December. Little contradictions there. Something's not right. So Jewel was, the business was facing bankruptcy apparently. I don't know. It's a lot of inconsistencies. Like 1 month the business is doing great, they're getting ready to do $10,000 worth of renovations, and then 2 months later they're facing bankruptcy. Kind of not piecing together. We'll keep sliding. The fourth suspect was dear old Roland West himself. As we had touched on, he had a very violent, volcanic temper. He would also beat Thelma and was very, very controlling. Just not a good relationship at all. Now, his volcanic temper, he also thought that the business was losing money, and he had access to the garage, he had access to the apartment, he had so much opportunity. Nothing really came of that. Obviously, this is still an unsolved issue. Nobody knows what happened to her. Some people still say that she took her own life, and some people say that it was murder. To me, the suicide doesn't hold much ground. But little thing about Roland that just is a little bit of an icing on top of the cake is that his friend Chester Morris claims, and if he's a friend, why would he make something like this up? But Chester claims that on Roland's deathbed, he had admitted to him that he he had killed Thelma. So nobody else heard it. It was only said to Chester. It's Chester's word against anything else. Personally, I don't see why his friend would lie. Like, why would you make something up like that about your friend? Doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. Right. So, as you can see, there we go. We got this nice little corner going. We got some of the black lettering. This is actually, let me see. It's gonna be like that for you. But let's dive into the final suspect. Mummy Dearest, Alice Todd. Now, as we had touched on before, Alice is the one who had signed Thelma up for all of those beauty pageants. She didn't want her daughter to be a school teacher, even though that's what Thelma wanted to do. She wanted to be a teacher. And her mom was like, nope, you're going to do these beauty pageants instead. And Thelma had bought her a very expensive house not far away from where the restaurant was. So she lived in close proximity. She's always stuck with the accidental death. She does not think that Thelma was murdered. At least publicly, she does not say that. My ear's getting all tangled up. However, Alice was also the sole heir to, she was the primary beneficiary, the only beneficiary for Thelma's fortune. Not long after Thelma's death, Alice had announced that she was going to build a new mansion. She was going to do all these renovations. She was going to get this grand mansion built for her. But she had no income. She had no means to pay for this if Thelma was still alive. Let's make your daughter successful, then let's, take care of her to get the money. She's an evil mama. Mummy Dearest, man. She is. So, she'd always claimed that it was an accident, even with the correct rights, which I still, how? How is it an accident? How is it her taking her own life if the cracked ribs just don't make sense? They don't. I don't understand how anybody could say, what'd she do to herself? How could the carbon monoxide cause the cracked ribs? The broken nose, I can see, like, as she passed out, that she fell onto the steering wheel or the dashboard and broke her nose and then, slid down and slumped over to the side of the car. But that doesn't account for the cracked ribs. I just don't get it. I don't really have a strong inkling on any of the suspects from each other. They all were pretty shady, awful people. They all had motive. It's just nothing like really screams at me like, oh, this person did it. All I know is I really do not think that it was her taking her own life. The evidence doesn't line up for it. So, what are your thoughts? What do you think? Do you think she did take her own life? Or do you think that Pat did it? Lucky? Roland? Or his wife Jewel? Or Roland and Jewel together? That's an interesting thought. Or do you think it was Mummy Dearest? I would love to hear your thoughts. And as always, if you have any suggestions, any ideas, tips, whatever, what have you, please feel free to comment below.